Hey everyone, it's Al with Longoria House Dog Training, just coming back at you with our next Ask the Expert question. And today we're taking a question from Suzanne. Suzanne's question was on barking, and here's what her question was: how do you reduce excessive barking? Well, excessive barking is one of those things that can really be annoying. I know a lot of times I come into homes and I notice that the dogs are in their crates and they're just going absolutely nuts. And I tell people that obviously it's very natural for your dog to be barking, but obviously Suzanne wants to know, how do you get rid of it? Well, the process that we use is not as simple as maybe I'd like it to be, but I find that it's been pretty effective for us at reducing the rate of barking. So the first thing I want to do is actually begin to teach the dog the opposite of barking, which for me, I like to teach the dog what it's like to be quiet. Many of the times that I see barking in dogs, it's because the situation that they're in doesn't have a solution, and then they just bark to see if somehow, some way, all this noise that they're creating is going to have a way of getting them out of their problems. So the first thing I like to do is begin to present a problem. So if your dog is barking inside of a crate a lot, this is where I begin to teach the dog that when I approach, and if I open the door and you bolt out or try to bolt out, then I'm going to quickly close the door in front of you. What this begins to do, and many of the solutions that we have for the dog are not about necessarily the one particular exercise, but actually beginning to turn the dog's brain on to solve some problems. I feel that once we get the dog thinking, they tend to shut up very quickly, and then I can begin to reward them for that actual act. So, in phase one of your training, what you want to do is begin to identify situations where you have some control. Either your dog's in the crate, either you have a leash on your dog, or you're withholding the reward some way from your dog. And when your dog is quiet and giving you this kind of quiet behavior, plus maybe a sit, maybe eye to eye contact, begin to click and begin to reward the dog for being quiet. Okay? So I actually do this for a while, and the three main things that we try to teach the dog where they're actually quiet is how to stay down on their bed, how to sit by their side, or sit by my left-hand side, and also how to come all the way back to me. Generally, when I'm working on those exercises, especially when I'm asking them to lay in their place, the dogs tend to be quiet because of the way that we've taught them. The way that we're teaching the dog is basically this is right and this is wrong. When the dog is on the bed and being quiet, they're getting rewarded for this particular behavior early on in the process. Where if they're coming off, there's absolutely no reward, and then I'm putting them back onto their bed with varying degrees of pressure down the leash back onto the bed. As the dog begins to see the contrast of being on the bed and getting very rewarded, and coming off the bed and not being rewarded at all, and then being physically put back, they also tend to become quiet very quickly. So if you're really having a lot of problems with your barking behavior though, one particular thing that a lot of people do, but it's not generally where I would start with a dog, is a bark collar. So the theory behind the bark collar is this: that when the dog barks, the technology of the bark collar will actually sense the dog barking and then emit stimulation to the dog that is unpleasant. And then that unpleasant association, if it works properly, is associated to barking, and then the dog ends up ceasing to bark. The reason I don't particularly like using these devices in the beginning with the dog is because I like to reward them for being quiet before ever I tell them, don't be quiet. In some situations though, we've been in some where we've had to tell the dog immediately, quit barking right away, generally because it led to some kind of aggression. But I would have a dog that if it's just barking annoyingly, I would begin to engage the dog's mind into some games. So here's something else that you can do with the dog. If you end up using a tool like the remote collar or even your leash, every time your dog barks, if the remote collar or the leash will turn on, not necessarily at a high level, but enough for the dog to be aware that you're touching it, when the dog goes quiet, remove the pressure from the leash or remove the pressure from the remote collar. Once the dog is quiet for several seconds, click, and now begin to reward the dog abundantly. What you want to try to do is show the dog the big difference between being very quiet and also, being loud. So if they're being loud, there's no reward, there's pressure from the leash. If they are quiet, then there's a bunch of reward. Well, Suzanne, I hope this helped you in some way. And if you're watching this for the first time, I hope this is helping you. Again, my name is Al. I'm with Longoria Haas Dog Training. If you'd like to submit your questions, please go to our website. We have Ask the Trainer there. Submit your questions, and I'll shoot these videos to help you guys out. Well, again, thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you guys soon.